Let Me Bend Your Ear podcast. My name is Frank. I'm the host of the show. I discuss and review movies new and old. You can watch the show on YouTube and also on Facebook. Just search under the Let Me Bend Your Ear podcast. You can listen to the show wherever you get your podcast. Please rate and review the show on the platform you listen to or watch the show on. You can also email the show at bendyourearpodcast@gmail.com. Please visit the website at letmebendYourEar.com. All episodes are available there. On this episode, I'm going to discuss and review Longlegs. Now, it's been a few weeks since I've been on to do a new episode, as I always struggle as I host this podcast, and I always try to promise to get out a weekly episode, yet I've not succeeded in that endeavor. Not because I don't want to do it, it's because real life kind of intrudes on my ability to take time to record the podcast, even though I do it, as you see, very lo-fi and try to get them out quickly. It's just been a crazy few weeks. So I am glad to be back. Hopefully I can bang out a couple of episodes in a row and get those out to you so you can listen to and enjoy. Again, I really want to thank everyone that listens and downloads the show. As I've stated in the last few episodes, there's been an uptick in the downloads of the show, and I really appreciate that. Every single person that downloads and listens to it, whether it's once and they try it or they continue to do so, I am super appreciative of doing that. So obviously, I've started this podcast 6 years ago, and I want to grow it, and I appreciate everyone that's listened to it or recommended it to somebody. So again, I want to always put my appreciation and thanks out there to the people that do listen to the podcast, and let you know that I am super appreciative of you taking the time to do that. You know, I know there's, as the joke goes, there's 45 million podcasts, and I don't think I'm exaggerating that number very much. So the fact that you even take the time to listen to this one is really, really special to me. So thank you so much for that. I really appreciate it. All right, so before I get into the review, I'm going to discuss some background on Longlegs. This is a movie that I think, and if you've read anything about it, the marketing campaign for this movie has been pretty fantastic. And I think the marketing campaign, frankly, is the reason I ended up watching the movie. Like I said, I watched it a few weeks back. I just getting around to reviewing it now. But it was marketed as a kind of a bunch of different things. But the main thing it was marketed as is the scariest movie to be released in a while. And there were some comparisons. As I get into the review, you'll see why. The biggest comparison was Silence of the Lambs. Now, of course, Silence of the Lambs is the 1991 Jonathan Demme directed film that swept the Oscars that year. Best Actress, Jodie Foster. Best Actor, Anthony Hopkins. Best Picture, Best Director. I think even the screenplay by Ted Talley won as well. So that kind of swept the Oscars that year. And of course, it's a classic thriller film. Like I said, I saw that in the movies in 1991, and it was a pretty fantastic film. And Longlegs has had some comparisons to that because the protagonist here is also an FBI agent, a young FBI agent, just like Jodie Foster's Clarice Starling was in Silence of the Lambs. And of course, the second thing that's attractive about the film is about Nicolas Cage. So obviously, Nicolas Cage is kind of, I don't want to say polarizing because that's the wrong word. I think Nicolas Cage is his own thing, and the intensity that he brings to his roles, I think, has been, well renowned, and he's won an Academy Award for Leaving Las Vegas. And I think over the last couple of years, I think there was a period of time where he was kind of making a lot of B pictures and just making movies. And I think he even admitted that he'd made a lot of these movies for the money. I think he has a lot of financial problems that he's rectified by making a lot of films, which I have no issue with. Look, acting is a job. Everybody wants to have this pure notion that all he should be doing is Oscar-nominated type work. Look, he's got to pay the bills just like everybody else. I always laugh at the Michael Caine quote from Jaws, The Revenge. People, would ask him about that. He's like, hey, I got a beautiful house that got built because of that movie. So, it doesn't bother me at all. But I think what's happened with Cage over the last few years is he's been in films that have been on the radar as films that critics enjoy. Pig, which I reviewed for this podcast. If you go back to the back catalog, you can see the review, which I liked very much and liked his performance in it very much. He was in the Unbearable, I forgot the long title, basically playing himself with Pedro Pascal. I forgot the name of the film. It's a long title, which was an entertaining film as well. And I know it kind of started with the horror film Mandy, which I have not seen. There's a lot of people that champion that movie as a bonkers kind of gonzo movie and a great performance by Cage in that movie. So I may get around to watching Mandy and reviewing it for the podcast. So this film Longlegs is another example of that. Like I said, on the pre-release hype, which was I think well done, which actually drew me in. And like I said, I am a fan of Nicolas Cage, so it was interesting to me. So I checked it out. So let me get into the plot of the film. So Longlegs opens with a little girl in the 1970s in Oregon. So she's walking around with a Polaroid camera and she hears a voice and follows the voice and runs into a very pale man. He's got makeup on, long hair, creepy, and has an encounter with him. Nothing bad happens or anything, but she encounters this person, this little girl. And then the movie fast forwards into the 90s. So the movie is set in the 90s. You can see a lot of things that are going on. It's a 90s set film. I think like a lot of directors have decided to do, I think if I was ever going to make a film, a writer, direct a film, with all the obviously, if you set it in the current time, you just have the internet, you have obviously the ubiquitous cell phone and everything, and it kind of undermines a lot of just kind of plot devices that you would probably use, because they'd be like, oh, just pick up your cell phone. So I think setting this movie in the 90s is a great idea. It kind of, strips it down a little bit. Obviously we don't have, barely email. That's definitely barely internet. People were faxing, using payphones, and cell phones were, rare at that point. But the movie starts in the moves forward from the 90s to the 70s. You have an FBI agent named Lee Harker, who's played by Maika Monroe. I don't know if I'm pronouncing her name correctly. I have not seen her in any other movies. Some people were talking about her in other films, but this is the first movie I've seen her in. So the movie sets up when it gets to the 90s with basically implying that Harker has some kind of clairvoyance or ability to see things outside the realm of the normal world. So this talent is noticed by the FBI, and based on that, she's assigned to a series of murder-suicides that are occurring in Oregon. So the thing that's happening, and this is kind of like, Silence of the Lamb vibe, or even Manhunter, which is the other one of my favorite movies of the 80s with the serial killer killing families. So this is kind of similar to that as well. So what makes this particular series of murders interesting is that each case that's happened over the last 30 or so years involves a father killing his entire family and then killing himself. And then the father leaves behind a letter with some type of coding, and then the letters are signed Longlegs. The thing that makes it even more, what's the word I'm looking for, more baffling, is that the handwriting of this letter matches no one in the family. So, of course, the FBI can't figure out why there's a murder-suicide, but yet it appears that there's an outside person involved somehow. But the physical evidence doesn't lead to anyone in the house. There's no signs of break-ins. It clearly looks like a murder-suicide. But again, they're stumped as to how they believe someone else is involved, but they have no clue how they could pull this off without having any kind of physical evidence linking these person or persons to these murders. So Harker is assigned to assist in this case and see if they can figure it out. So that's the main. It's a pretty straightforward plot that way. So a couple of things, it plays like a procedural, like a police procedural that you would see on television. So basically, she's trying to assist in solving these murders and trying to figure out the connection, anything in the letters or in the scenes of the crimes that would lead them to some kind of clue as to what's going on. So I don't want to give too much away in this here, because when you watch the movie, there's some things that are revealed in the movie that I think if I say too much now, it's going to give away some of the fun of the movie or some of the surprises in the movie. But what I can tell you is Harker's mother is introduced in the film, and she's played by actress Alicia Witt. So there are flashbacks involving Harker and her mother, and her mother is odd. There were some things that she did with the daughter that were odd as far as behaviors, and you can see there's several scenes depicting phone conversations between Harker and her mom where you can tell that they are, I don't know if estranged would be the right word, but they're definitely not close. You know, she's doing this job. Her mother asks when she's going to come home to visit. She always basically says, we'll see, kind of that attitude. So it's definitely a strained and not close relationship. So that character is brought into the movie as well. And Harker's working for Agent Browning. Excuse me, not Agent Browning. I'm sorry. The head of the team that's working this murder is Agent Carter, who's played by, and I did not know he was in this movie until I watched it, actor Blair Underwood. So if you're familiar with Blair Underwood, he's been around since the 80s. I first saw him in LA Law on television. And the first thing, which has nothing to do with his performance, which I'll get to in a second, the thing that was shocking to me is that he looks exactly the same. I don't even know how old he is. He looks the same. It was quite unbelievable. He's got to be in his late 50s, if not older. And he looks the same as he did in the 80s. So that, just a side note, unbelievable. But his performance in this movie is actually fantastic. So I really haven't seen Blair Underwood in anything. I'm not to say he hasn't done anything. I just haven't seen him in films. He may be still doing television. I don't know. But it was great to see him in this movie, and he's very, very good in it. The entire cast is very good. You have Alicia Witt, like I said, as Lee's mother, and you have, of course, Nicolas Cage pops into the movie as Longlegs. That's not really a secret, so that's not too much that I can, there's no spoilers there. If you watch the trailers, they hype the fact that he is Longlegs. And like I said, it's a procedural because there's really not a mystery per se of who done it. It's really how it's being done. That's really the mystery of this movie, is how Longlegs is impacting these murder suicides. How is that working? And that's really the kind of the puzzle that Lee is trying to solve in this film. So, like I said, let me get to some more of the things that I liked. I liked, like I said, the performances are good all the way around. The atmosphere that's created, I think there's a sense of dread in the movie that pervades it. That you can feel like just bad things all around it, and I think that's the atmosphere that Osgood Perkins wanted to permeate in the film, and he succeeds in that very well. And one of the things I liked about the movie, which was also, other than Blair Underwood being in it, surprising me, is the movie, which I can't believe I'm saying, the movie is funny. And I don't mean it's a comedy, but what I mean is there are moments that are particularly funny with a dark humor, and actually there's a laugh out loud hilarious scene that takes place in a mental hospital when Lee is trying to visit someone there to help with the case, and the person that's running the place is basically incompetent. And the way this actor plays this scene in the movie is so funny. And it was surprising how funny it was. Like, the audience laughed out loud when I was watching it in the theater. And I think it was well placed, and it's a good device to kind of lighten the heaviness of the rest of the movie. So it was a welcome surprise. But that was the funniest moment. There were a couple of very darkly funny moments in the movie, which was a pleasant surprise to me as well. And that's mainly the things that I liked about it. Like I said, I don't want to get too much into the story. I pretty much laid out the story. There's really not much to add without kind of getting into, not spoilers per se, but kind of giving too much away of the plot, which I don't want to do. The things that I didn't like, it's tough because there wasn't anything I didn't like. I think for me, I was expecting, and this is again the double-edged sword of very good marketing. I think that this was marketed as more of a horror film than it actually is. So if you're going into this film expecting it to be a slasher movie or a horror film or that type of movie, I think you will be disappointed. I wasn't disappointed per se because for me, like I said, horror is probably my least favorite genre. There's some great horror films that I am a fan of, but it's not my go-to genre of film. But I was definitely expecting more of a horror vibe in this movie and didn't see it. So again, if you're looking for that type of movie, you'll not to say you won't like Longlegs, but I think you'll be disappointed. But because I think it was marketed more so that way than it actually is. Like I said, it really leans towards the procedural type of movie with kind of other things thrown in. Again, I don't want to say too much more, but I enjoyed the movie. There's some critics out there that have, heaped a lot of praise on this movie, calling it one of the best, horror films in a long time. I wouldn't go that far. I thought it was very good, but I don't think it ranks up there with the best ever. So I think if you go in there and with some temper, I'm not saying going there with low expectations, just going there with them tempered a little bit and knowing what you're getting into. But I did enjoy the movie, and I did find a lot to like about it. Like I said, was there anything I disliked? No, not really. I think it was well done. And like I said, it just wasn't what I expected. But again, it wasn't disappointing in that way, unless you really were going in looking for a hardcore horror film, which this movie is not. This is an atmospheric film with very good performances. The lead performance, like I said, by Micah Monroe. I've never seen her before, but she's very good in it. Nicolas Cage is, Nicolas Cage. It's almost an adjective to say that he puts his all in oddball characters, and there's no exception here. And like I said, one of the standouts to me was Blair Underwood. He was fantastic in his role, and Alicia Witt as Harker's mother is good as well in her role in the film. But again, good music, good cinematography. Like I said, there is a sense of dread throughout the entire film, and like I said, the atmosphere that's created by Perkins in here is very good. I would compare it to Seven, David Fincher's film, with Pitt and Morgan Freeman, because that movie, probably more than any other movie of this genre, really, there was just overwhelming dread in that film. And even with Seven, I can't even think of anything. It never let up. I don't even think there was any kind of moments of lightness. I haven't watched Seven in a long time, but I don't think there was anything there that would even lighten anything in that film. Whereas here, like I said, in Longlegs, there was a surprising number of moments that made you laugh, and then of course that kind of lightens the dread a little bit, which I thought was a good balance and a nice addition to this particular movie. So like I said, I enjoyed Longlegs. I don't think it's an all-timer like some people have said, but I did enjoy it. I'm going to go ahead in my star review and give Longlegs, I'm going to give it 3.5 stars out of 5. So again, 3.5 is a decent review. It's a recommendation. Would I see the movie again? Really, honestly, probably not. So that's probably what keeps me from giving it either a 4. So 4 or 5 on my scale would be a movie that I would rewatch. And this movie, I don't know if I would revisit it. Not to say that I wouldn't for sure, but I wouldn't. Not enough to me to give it 4 stars. So I'll give it 3.5. Again, it's a qualified recommendation from me. I think if you're into the procedural type movies, serial killer solving, things like that, there's a lot to like about it, and a lot I did like about it. I just can't go all the way through and say it's a rewatchable movie that I would watch over and over again. So I'm going to give Longlegs, written and directed by Osgood Perkins, 3.5 stars out of 5. And again, I think it's still playing in theaters now. I'm sure you can get it on VOD. If it's not, I still believe it is. I think it went over the $100 million mark worldwide. So I know it's not a $10 million budget. So it's a low budgeted film that's actually doing very well. And for me, in the bigger picture of films, I'm glad to see it, because again, it's nice to see movies that are not comic book sequels or anything like that doing well. Again, as I always qualify this is not to knock those type of movies. Obviously, Deadpool and Wolverine is doing massive business, and that's fine with me. But I really am a champion of trying to get other films that are good. That's got to be the first thing, that are well done to have success. So any movies like these that are original stories, whether I love them, don't like them very much, or whatever my opinion is of them, it's great that they get out in the marketplace, and it's good that they become successful, because that's the only way that that movie companies will continue to make these movies, if they can be shown to be successful. And so something like Longlegs, I'm glad to see has done well. And like I said, it just goes to show you, and that's the other thing I always talk about too. The thing that's missing, and I'm not the first person to say it, but I've noticed it forever, is mid-budgeted adult dramas, horror films, just movies for adults, not for teenagers, not for young adults, but for adults that can enjoy them, whether it's thrillers or comedies or courtroom dramas or whatever genre that happens to be available that you don't really see anymore. So anything like this, it makes me happy when original films do well. And like I said, this film, if I'm reading it correctly, was budgeted at $10 million. So that's a low budget movie. So you have a movie budgeted at $10 million, and it's going to bring in worldwide 10 times its budget, that's perfect. And that's the kind of movies, that can succeed in this marketplace where the break even to profit point is super low. So there's a low bar to hit before the movie's a hit. So I'm glad to see that this movie has done that. So again, I'm going to give Longlegs, directed and written by Osgood Perkins, 3.5 stars out of 5. So again, like I said, worth checking out. Like I said, I couldn't give it the 4 because I couldn't push it to the point where it'd be something that I rewatch all the time. So again, 3.5 stars out of 5 for Longlegs. And I want to thank you for listening to the show. You can follow this podcast on the following social media platforms. The show is on X, Instagram, and YouTube. The handle for all of those is at Bend Your Ear Pod. If you could, please subscribe to the YouTube channel and also the Facebook page. Again, I want to grow the audience, grow the engagement. So if you could do that, I appreciate it. If you do subscribe on the YouTube channel, whenever the show goes live, you'll get a notification when the new show is available, and you can pop on and check it out. And if you are watching the show on YouTube or on Facebook, if you look right up here on the left-hand side, you'll see a QR code. You can just hit that to support the show. This show is a one-man operation, and any little bit helps. Even my podcasting is being affected by inflation. My rate for my website has gone up, and things that the costs that are associated with doing this show are gone up. So again, it's not prohibitive, it's not outrageous, but like I said, if you can throw a couple of bucks my way for the show, it just offsets the cost of producing the show. So if you could do that, I really appreciate that. Like I said, I'm a one-man operation. I know, even though the production value is fantastic. So if you could do that, that'd be great. And I want to thank you for listening. And again, before I sign off, as I said at the top of the show, I really want to thank all of the people that download the show. Like I said, the show has gone up in uploads. And like I said, the numbers are irrelevant in the sense that when I started doing this show 6 years ago, if I got, just to bring numbers up at the beginning, if I got like 2 uploads on an episode in a week or 2 in a couple of weeks, that was fantastic. So the fact that I will get higher numbers than that now is fantastic. And like I said, I'm completely grateful for that. So if you are listening regularly, and someone that would like to hear a new movie podcast, or they love movies, please throw a recommendation their way to this show. I would really appreciate it. If you see my post on X, I'm on X all the time. So if you want to interact with me, that's actually, the email for the show is bendyourpodcast@gmail.com. But really the best, quickest way to get a hold of me is on X. I'm there all the time, talking to other movie people, commenting on movie posts. So that's the easiest way to get a hold of me. If you have ideas for movies you want me to review, or you want to dialogue on that, feel free to do that. I'm happy to do that. I've talked to a lot of people on X that are movie fans, and like I said, nothing gives me more joy than talking about movies. It's one of my passions in life. Other than my children and my family, my other 2 passions in life are movies and sports. So I love those things completely, and I never get tired of talking about it. So again, please feel free to reach out to me on X. If you host a podcast yourself, a movie podcast, find me on X, follow me. Of course, I'll follow you back. Or even if you don't, follow me, and I'll definitely follow back. So definitely interact with me on X. And again, I am appreciative of everyone that's downloaded the show, that listens to the show. Like I said, I want to put it out there because I know, like I said, I'm a podcast listener. I don't really interact with the podcast I listen to, with a couple of exceptions. So I know there's people out there that are listening and watching that don't ever reach out to me or interact. And I'm not even asking you to do that unless you want to. That's why I want to say it, while I'm on the show, so that you hear it, that I appreciate every single download, every time you listen to it. I really appreciate it. Even if I never hear from you, that's okay. I want you to at least to know that I really appreciate you listening, because I want to grow this show. It's been a slow growth, and I'm not saying that as a complaint. It's just that's what it is. I'm an independent podcaster. I do this when I can. Like I said at the top of the show, I want to put out an episode every week. I haven't been successful in doing that for various reasons, but it hasn't diminished my love for doing this podcast. When I decided to do this back in 2018, I had a lot going on, and it was really an outlet or release, something positive for me at a time when I needed it. And it's still been that way for me now, and I love it. I love doing it. The only thing that I hate is that I can't do it more, which is a good problem to have. That's a great problem to have. And like I said, I want to thank you again. And I'm going to sound like a broken record about it, but I mean it. I do appreciate it. I appreciate the fact that you're interested in my take on movies. That's very cool to me, and I'm super appreciative of that, and I'll always be grateful for that, and I will never take that for granted. So please accept my thanks on that. And again, if you think a friend or a family member will like it, please feel free to recommend it. And of course, if you see my posts on X, if you could, 2 ways you can really help the show is to like my post, share my post on there. And really the biggest thing is if you listen on, if you watch on YouTube, listen on Spotify. I'm on pretty much all the major podcasting platforms. So wherever you listen to it, it's probably going to be there. Apple Podcast, Spotify, Google, iHeartRadio. So anywhere, if you can just rate and review the show, hopefully you'll give it a 5-star review, because the more ratings and reviews any show gets, and you'll hear it even on big podcasts, the higher in the search results the show will come up when people are looking for a new movie podcast to listen to. So if you can do that, I would super appreciate it. It costs nothing, and it's easy to do. And like I said, if you want to take that extra step and chip in, like I said, please feel free. The production cost of it has risen somewhat. Again, it's not prohibitive, but like I said, every little bit helps. $1, $5, whatever. Any little bit helps, and it goes right into paying for the things I need to keep the podcast going. So I'm going to go ahead and wrap it up. Like I said, I'm going to hopefully bang out a couple of episodes this weekend and get them out to make up for the couple of weeks that I've been missing. So again, to wrap up, Longlegs, directed by Osgood Perkins, I give 3.5 stars out of 5. And again, thank you for listening, and have a fantastic week.